Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekanandasure Satchit Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So this is Swami Vivekananda's lecture, Realization, and we had come in this preliminary part, the story that leads up to the Upanishad. We were basically finishing off the second boon that Nachiketa asked, and he asks about certain sacrifices, some stuff about going to heaven, etc., etc. And Vivekananda gives the background to this in this last paragraph dealing with that. Then a body of men made it their business to carry on these sacrifices. These were the priests who speculated on the sacrifices, and the sacrifices became everything to them. Mark the word speculated. Yeah, essentially, he's not saying that it's not about enquiry-based or truth-based knowledge or pursuits. It's based on speculation and guesswork. The gods, the sacrifices became everything to them. The gods came to enjoy the fragrance of the sacrifices. It was considered that everything in this world could be got by the power of sacrifices. If certain oblations were made, certain hymns chanted, certain peculiar forms of altars made, the gods would grant everything. So Nachiketa asks, by what form of sacrifice can a man go to heaven? The second boon was also readily granted by Yama, who promised that this sacrifice should henceforth be named after Nachiketa. See, Yama has absolutely no hesitation in essentially supporting this narrative about going to heaven, hell, etc., etc. These kind of easy to understand things, yeah, speculation, and these are purely speculations. One could believe in them, one could not believe in them, and nobody is going to be the better or worse for it. And since they are speculations, it's easy to communicate. He does that. So so far it's basically building up. It's dismissing the things that the Upanishad is not going to be dealing with in essence. First, this father's anger made be ceased. Very well, very, very down to earth thing, resolved. Now the speculative part of it, again resolved. Yeah? Now starts coming to the core of the issue. And this is how it says in the Upanishad, in Swamiji's lecture. When the third boon comes, and with that the Upanishad proper begins. The boy said, there is this difficulty. When a man dies, some say he is, others that he is not. Instructed by you, I desire to understand this. But Yama was frightened. He had been very glad to grant the other two boons. Now he said, the gods in ancient times were puzzled on this point. This subtle law is not easy to understand. Choose some other boon, O Nachiketa. Do not press me on this point. Release me. The boy was determined and said, what you have said is true, O death, that even the gods had doubts on this point, and it is no easy matter to understand. But I cannot obtain another exponent like you, and there is no other boon equal to this. Death said, ask for sons and grandsons who will live for 100 years, many cattle, elephants, gold and horses. Ask for empire on this earth and live as many years as you like. Or choose any other boon which you think equal to these, wealth and long life. Or be thou a king, O Nachiketa, on the wide earth. I will make thee the enjoyer of all desires. Ask for all those desires which are difficult to obtain in the world. These heavenly maidens with chariots and music, which are not to be obtained by man, are yours. Let them serve you, O Nachiketa, but do not question me as to what comes after death. Nachiketa said, these are merely things of a day, O death. They wear away the energy of all the sense organs. Even the longest life is very short. These horses and chariots, dances and songs may remain with thee. Man cannot be satisfied by wealth. Can we retain wealth when we behold thee? We shall live only so long as thou desires. Only the boon which I have asked is chosen by me. This is really the starting point of the Upanishad, as Swamiji says here. I'll quickly summarize what he just now said. So basically what is happening? Essentially, this is the core question that the whole Upanishad says. It says, see, there is this, all Upanishads, as we've said a few times before, center around a certain basic fundamental question. And here the question is, essentially, what is he asking? He says, at death, some say that the person who dies continues to be. Some say that he is not. Everything ceases. What is the truth about this? This is the question. And what's Yama's answer? Basically says that this question is very difficult to understand. He understands that, he's already talked about this heaven, earth, heavens, hells, and all this, these stories, these narratives that he has already dismissed in the previous one of going to heaven. Some are sacrificed to go to heaven. But here he clearly understands that Nachiketa wants a more solid answer, not speculative, not gaseous. Yeah? So he wants a real answer. And therefore, because Yama senses the seriousness of intent, he basically says that, look, this question, even the gods of yore were not clear upon. And because they were not clear upon this, it's very difficult for me to give you this boon. Ask for something else. Release me from this word that I have given you, that you can ask any three boons. Ask anything else. And he offers usual pleasures of the earth. Yeah, long life, wealth, comforts, etc., etc. And Nachiketa's response is that these are all transitory. And once one is aware of this death that destroys us, how can one remain satisfied? All these are temporary things. I need an answer to my real question. This is the summary of this part where the Upanishad starts. Two things are to be noted. First, the seriousness and depth of the question. Second, the particular fact that Nachiketa was unwilling to be distracted from this pursuit of truth. Yeah? For this pursuit of this, what is the truth in this question? What is the answer? Yeah? That quality called Shraddha. Shraddha avivesha somanyata. So that was there in the very beginning of the Upanishad. It is that Shraddha, astikya buddhi. What is the truth? There is truth behind this question. And catching hold of this and penetrating deeper is what it's about. Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll go to the corresponding passages of the original Kathopanishad, yeah? And slowly try to unravel what Swamiji has said here, because once we state the original passages, you'll start seeing how freely Vivekananda has translated this. And so here's the question. Yeyam prete vichikitsa manushye asti tyeke nayam asti tichaike etad vidyam anushishta stvayaham varanam esha varastitiya ya iyam prete vichikitsa manushye asti iti eke nayam asti na ayam asti iti cha eke. So that's the breakup. What does it say? It says once somebody dies, some say that the person is, some say that the person is not. Etad vidyam. What is the truth about this? Anushishta stvaya aham. Having been instructed by you, I want to learn. Varanam esha varastritya. This is the third boon I ask. And as soon as he hears it, Yama's response, Deve atra api devairatra api vichikitsitam pura nahi suvigneyam anuresha dharma. Anu is subtle. So the answer to this question is subtle. Subtle. Even the gods of yore were not clear on this point. Anyam varam nachiketo vrinishva. Choose some other boon, Nachiketa. Ma uparotsi iti mya ma srijenam. So don't make me bound by this promise of three boons. Ask for something else. And then Nachiketa's response, Devairatrapi vichikitsitam kila. He says, I agree that the gods of yore were not clear on this point. Tvamcha mrityo yatna sugneyam atha. But I can't get another instructor as good as you. Vakta chasya tva kvadrik anyo na labhyo. Na anyo vara tulya etasya kashchit. So he basically says, okay, yeah, he's onto a good thing. I am not going to ask for a separate boon. I want to know the answer to this question. And then Yama basically first pleaded with him, essentially trying to saying that, look, ask for something else. And then Nachiketa is adamant. And in response, now Yama tries tempting him. Shatayusha putra pautran vinishva. Yeah, so may you live 100 years, have grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Yeah, those were regarded as a symbol of wealth and well-being in those days. Bahun pashun hasti hiranyam ashwan. Yeah? With lot of cattle, etc. Bhumer mahat ayatanam vrinishva. Rule over a huge plot of land. Swayam cha jiva sharado yavat ichchasi. Live as long as you like. Etat tulyam yadi manya sevaram. Or if you think there is something else that is comparable to this, vrinishva vittam chirajivikancha. Yeah, so covet wealth and long life. Mahabhumau nachiketas tvamedhi kamanam tva kama bhajam karomi. So whatever you desire, I'll fulfill those. And then he goes on to things which are supposed to be things that are available in the heavens. Ye kama durlabha martya loke sarvan kaman chandata prarthayasva imarama saratha saturya nahi drisha lambhaniya manushye abhirmat pratabhi paricharayasva nachiketo maranam manu prakshi. Maranam ma anu prakshi. So then he gives him all kinds of heavenly enjoyments. I mean, all these apsaras who are supposed to be dancing in the heavens, he offers all of that heavenly joys, etc., etc., and says, don't ask me about death. Maranam ma anuprakshi. Anuprakshi is questioning. So this is basically Yama trying to divert his attention from this central question that Nachiketa asked. After death, is one there? Is one not there? So that's the question, but Nachiketa holds on to it, and it's this grit and determination that comes through. So first we said there were two things to be noted in this passage that we read from Vivekananda's realization. First, the depth of the question, one. Second, the tenacity and grit with which Nachiketa holds on to it. What is his response to all these temptations and trying to divert from there? This is the mantra which we have, which was the last thing that we read in Vivekananda's thing. So let's read it and then we'll go on to analyze it. Shvo bhava martasya yat antaka etat. Shwa. Shwa is tomorrow. Shwa. This is the SH sound. Para shwaha is day after tomorrow. So shwa bhava. Of the nature, bhava is nature. Shwa bhava, if you split it, it becomes shwa bhava. That means of the nature of tomorrow. Which means, what is the connotation? The connotation is something that is there today and gone tomorrow. Something that is transient. He is after something that is permanent. Shobhava martyasya yat antaka etat. All these things that you have offered me, antaka etat. All of these have an end. And all these pleasures that you have offered, what do? Sarvendriyanam jarayanti teja. They exhaust the energy of the senses. The senses become exhausted. Api sarvam jivitam alpameva. All life is too short. Long life that you are offering is too short for the enjoyment of all these things. Tavaiva baha, and then this is a kind of an amusing thing. Tavaiva baha tava nritya gita. So you please keep these song and dance to yourself. I want the answer to my question. So there are these two things. Let's reiterate these two shlokas, these two mantras from the Upanishad. First, Yeyam prete vichikitsa manushe asti tyeke nayam asti chaike. There are two lines after that. That's the question. Ya iyam prete vichikitsa manushe asti eke na ayam asti chaike. And the second one is this, the grit and determination. See, the first is enquiry. Solid enquiry, getting to the core of the issue. And the second, Shobhava Martyasya Yadanta Kaitat Sarvendriyanam Jarayanti Teja Api Sarvam Jivitam Alpameva Tavaiva Baha Tava Nritya Gite. It's basically the will is attached to that enquiry, which means the mind is not to be wavered by distractions. In another place, Swami Vivekananda, when he talks about Jnana-Yoga, what is the faculty of mind that is responsible for the practice of Jnana-Yoga? He says that the analytical will of the philosopher. Analytical will, this quality. What is the analytical will? It's not some intellectual speculation, one, nor is it all these theological speculations, all these heavens, earths, hells, etc., etc. So it is not speculation. What is it? Analytical will. So a capacity to analyze, to separate out what is the dross from what is the essential. Viveka. But it's not just analysis. It is analysis coupled with this will, with this tenacity, the strength of will to hold on to that enquiry against all opposition. What kind of opposition? In this particular case, mind getting distracted by various other pleasant offers. Yeah? He was offered heavenly pleasures, pleasures of the earth, pride, etc. Things which would make any normal human being proud, but he is not to be diverted by any of this. He holds on to this central question with great determination. These two things, enquiry or sharp enquiring mind. What is the truth about this? First. Second, the capacity not to be distracted by other things that might come in the way. The first, this capacity to analyze is called Viveka, and the capacity to ignore other temptations, other distractions is called Vairagya. So that's why it's this double thing. Viveka, desire, Viveka is really, and it's not just this analysis, it's fueled. See, how will one give up? How is it? What is the faculty? What is the quality of the mind that allows one to not be distracted by other things? It has to be a positive focus on the answer, on a desire to know the answer, which means that the fuel that drives the enquiry is this love of truth above everything else. So the positive faculty there is love of truth above everything else. Positive thing is that. What does it do? It allows one to analyze and separate out the dross from the essential, and make sure that the inessential, the dross, does not distract the mind. Yeah? Shobhavamartyasya yadantakaitat sarvendriyanam. Why would one not be distracted? Because if one is distracted, what happens? Sarvendriyanam jarayanti tejaha. Indriyanam is our senses. Jarayanti is exhaustion. Teja is the brightness, the energy. Yeah? So this capacity to see and determine clearly. Yeah? That's the faculty. So it's a well alert mind coupled with the senses grasps the world exactly correctly, not in terms of some emotional turmoil. See, here is the thing. I mean, in the Buddhist literature, very often, and in the Vedantic literature, when we are talking about alertness, awareness, in the Zen tradition, it's called mindfulness. Here, it's what Vivekananda says: full attention to any action. What is happening is that the mind has this distracting faculty which throws up emotional turmoil. Yeah? I look at something, immediate gut feeling, oh, I like this, I dislike this, oh, this is associated with that, I am going to get annoyed by this. There's this emotional turmoil that clouds the mind whenever we perceive. The world around us is neither good nor bad. It is our emotions that we use consciously or unconsciously to color the world and declare that this is good, this is bad. If it is good, I want to be drawn towards it. If it's bad, I want to shrink away from it. So what is it that happens? We refuse to see the world without this coloration of the mind. That's why this is called, this practice is called Viraga. Vairagya comes from Vi, which means not raga. And what is this word raga? Raga is, it's in this Hindustani classical or Carnatic classical, there are, what are these called? Ragas, right? Those are some collection of music notes which you put together and the artist sings. What is the origin of that? Ranjate iti raga. That which colors the mind is called raga. Yeah? In fact, there is a documentary on this famous sitarist called Nikhil Banerjee. Yeah? Passed away. He died fairly young. And in fact, I think it's a concert that he was giving in Delhi or maybe Calcutta, either one of the places. And towards the last part, he was feeling unwell, and he got up from the concert and went there and had probably a cardiac arrest and passed away. But so basically the point being that till the last moment he was really with this vocation, this music, playing his sitar. Anyway, that's an aside. This raga, yeah, it literally means that which colors the mind. So what is viraga? Removing that coloration of the mind, seeing things for what they are. In other words, the mind has this habit of going forth and coloring the world around us in terms of how we would like to perceive it or how we would not like to perceive it, which means in terms of attachment or aversion. When these features of the mind are removed, which means the emotional stimulus is not immediate, we see things without this coloration of the mind. The seeing things without attachment or aversion, without love or hatred, yeah, without personal love or personal hatred, this quality of the mind, seeing things the way they are in this larger scheme of things, yeah, this is called Vairagya. This literally is called Vairagya. What happens is that one sees this larger scheme of things, which means that this individual collection of prejudices based on which we look out and declare this person is good, this person is bad, this person is stupid, this person is clever. All these judgments that burst forth instinctively. And there are quite old people who suffer from these same childish maladies, refuse to see a thing without coloration. What is it? It's basically the childish mind which is caught in this framework of love, of attachment and aversion, and is not willing to go beyond these polar opposites. So it's not something that is mystical in that sense, but it's a thing that is supposed to be an experiment done at every moment of our being. Yeah. In fact, there is this story that the Buddha, in one particular sutra, he was, I think, holding a flower in his hand, and he was completely silent. One of his, and people were wondering, when will he start giving the sermon? But Buddha continued remaining completely silent. After a while, in the front row, there was this preeminent disciple of the Buddha called Sariputra. I believe the stupa at Sanchi has some relics of his. Sariputra looked at the flower and a faint half smile broke across his face. And Buddha's response was that, yes, this is the person who has understood the meaning of this sermon. What was the meaning? It was to see the flower as a flower. Yeah? We can put all our words and colorations and emotions, but it will not capture the flower per se. But when we see it for what it is, without extra mental reaction, when the whole mind just sees the flower, and if the whole mind sees the flower, then in that flower, one sees all of the universe encapsulated. How? Because that flower has come from a tree that has grown up from the soil, from water, from rain. It has absorbed sunlight. So the view starts with the flower as a kind of a little window, and through the flower, it manages, as one looks at the sky through a window, it manages to look at the whole universe encapsulated in that little flower. Soil, water, rain, sun, and then the sun as part of this much larger collection of stars, this whole universe somehow captured this one little flower. And what happens? And so the reaction is this little smile, very subtle, which is essentially seeing something very great in something which is paradoxically very small. So when we say seeing things as they are, it is not a joke. It's essentially training our mind not to immediately, instinctively react to a stimulus that comes from outside. Yeah? And then what happens is essentially this, once one trains one, so this training of the mind in alertness, in awareness, from moment to moment, as we've said said this before, in the Upanishad, there is pratibodha viditam matam. Through every act of cognition is this reality perceived. Yeah? So whether you look at it from a Buddhist lens or an Upanishadic lens or through the lens of this Karma Yoga, common sense Karma Yoga, it doesn't really matter, because what you do is much more than what is packaged in words. Yeah? The words are supposed to be an indication of actually doing something. What is that? Holding your full mind in place, in the present moment, in the present location. Yeah? So there is, Again, there are various traditions. So there is this Omar Khayyam. Omar Khayyam was, I think we quoted this in some lecture before. Omar Khayyam was a great Persian poet, philosopher, mathematician, astronomer, at a time when all these things were not subdivided into fields. Yeah. And there's a translation of his, a famous collection of poems. It's not a collection of poems, it's one long collection, one long poem. One of those, it's written in verses of 4 lines each, translated by somebody called Edward Fitzgerald. It says, "O my beloved, fill the cup that clears, today of past regrets and future fears. Tomorrow, why tomorrow I may be myself with yesterday's 7,000 years." Anyway, the key line is today of past regrets and future fears, which means this mind held at the present moment, disregarding the past, disregarding the future. Yeah? The past with its regrets does not condition the mind. The future with its misery, with its tensions and fears, does not condition the mind, which means the mind is free from these attachments and aversions of the past and these aspirations for the future. It holds on to the present moment in and through everything that is done. This clear, alert mind is what is being talked about here. And what is that? What does that clear, alert mind? What is the quality that describes that clear, alert mind? It is lack of coloration, yeah? Lack of this raga, ranjate, no coloration, no extraneous coloration of our emotions. All that set aside. See, when we hear these things for the first time, there is a gut level reaction. Oh, but if we don't have any of these feelings, any of these, then wouldn't everything become dull and dry? The answer to that is no. Why is the answer to that no? Basically, the following. When we talk of these colorations of the world, what we are talking about is something that is just a little above the physical mind, essentially our emotion. Spurts of emotion come in some form or the other and then they go away. These are not feelings. The real feeling that we feel at the core of our being is not separable from the knowledge that something is true. This response to beauty, the response to truth, yeah, the response to goodness gets unified at the core of our being. So, complete clear knowledge comes with the feeling that something is true. This rings true. That's a feeling. We analyze and get to the truth. That is analytical. Yeah? That is that we in our minds separate out these two, the feeling part of it and the thinking part of it. But where these two faculties unify, and they get unified with the faculty, with the volitional aspect of the mind, the faculty to act. This unification of thinking, feeling, willing, yeah, is what Vedanta calls buddhi. Buddhi does not mean just intellect. It's a unification of thinking, feeling, and willing. That is the kind of mind that comes forth when we start practicing alertness on and focus on whatever we are doing. Yeah? Because then these artificial colors which fragmented the mind, made the mind spring forth in waves, that fragmentation is gone. What remains is the unified mind. And so to see the world as it is, to see even this microphone as it is, this laptop as it is, one needs the full mind. And the full mind is that which is not fragmented by these emotional turmoils that keep coming up and disturbing us. That once those things die down, become calmer, and you separate them out. How do you separate them out? Basically, this analytical will which looks at them and says, this is junk, this is trash, I will not be misled by those. That's the quality which has been emphasized in this particular verse by Nachiketa. Shobhava martyasya yadanta kaitata. I am not after the transitory. What terminates tomorrow is not what I am interested in. Why? Because that sarvendriyanam jarayanti teja api sarvam jivitam alpameva tavaiva vaha tava nrityaki. So we will pick up here at the next turn, and proceed with the rest of this first canto of the Kathopanishad next time. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram